We are on Daf Kuf Lamed Tes Amud Beis 139b. We begin the Mishnah. The parak had begun with the Machlokas Rabbi Lezer and the Chachamim. If you can put a meshameres, which is basically something like a cheesecloth over a barrel, and the sediment of wine would be put on there, and this way the wine would separate. So basically, you would put the cheesecloth on the barrel and the dregs of the wine press on top of that, and it would allow for more of the juices to separate and drip into the barrel. The next process that would be done on that is, after it was sitting for a while and the juices came out themselves, some water would be poured onto it, which would then run through the skins and sediment and bring out more flavor and more wine with it as it ran through. So essentially, here you have a case, a very interesting thing. You have the sediment is already on the net, on the cloth, which is going to be running. So it's already in the separator, if you would, and you pour water through it. The water starts off and ends in the same way. It was never a part of the mixture. So you're not separating the water from the sediment, even though that the net is acting as a separator once you add the water to it, once you pour the water. But the water started off alone, and it ends up at the bottom also without the sediment. And so that's not going to count as borer, as separation, because they were already not separated and not a mixture.
But on the other hand,
even though some of the sediment flavor or color and some wine coming through, that's nullified in the majority of what you're doing, and so therefore you're allowed to take water and pour it over the cloth that has the sediment in there, and the skins and wine pulp there, and because the water is starting off clean and running through, and you're not separating anything out from the water, and whatever's the wine, that's already there, and that's permissible. What's your question?
Well, I mean, maybe it's like a different issue, but I'm just wondering about it, because so if you're pouring the water over the pulp, the skins, whatever, because you want to extract flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you can't squeeze juice out, but apparently you could pour water and extract flavor. That's not a problem. I'm asking.
Correct.
Because
that's correct. The extraction of mafarik,
right,
which is
right,
called of dush, which is threshing. In threshing, you have a encapsulated substance. You have the wheat berry, and then you have the bran and husk and so on that's around it. In a grape, you have the juices encapsulated in the skins. You squeeze that, you're extracting the berry from the wheat stalk, the juices from the grape. Those are a mafarik. Where when you have a mixture of I mean, I watched some cheese making recently. So when you have a mixture of the cheese with the whey, and then you put it in a cheesecloth and let it hang, and the juices come out, that's not extraction, that's separation, because they're a mixture. It's not encapsulated in something else. That's a mixture. So the pulp of a press, you've gotten all the juices out, and now you just have it sit in a cloth, which is going to allow for the rest of it to run through. That's not an extraction from an encapsulated product, but rather it's just a mixture, and you're allowing it to separate. So that's a borer issue, selecting the good from the bad. but it's not going to be an issue of mafarik, which is what you were addressing. So I'm getting some flavor out. That's fine. What I can and since the water starts off whole, it starts off separate and ends separate from the pulp, and all that it did was that by running through, it took some flavor, color, and maybe some loose juice that is nullified in the water itself, and you're allowed to do this. So that's what the Mishnah begins. You could take water, as the Gemara is going to say, it starts off clear and ends clear. So you're not separating anything out from within the water, selecting a good from the bad, but rather it's just running straight through, and so you're allowed to do that. And you can sift the wine that's already clear, basically, because you've had the pulp run through this cloth. So at this point, the wine is clear. So then you can clarify it again, run it through another cloth, sudrin, a cloth, and we're not concerned that you're going to squeeze it out, which would be a question of similar to mafare, skita. And it was squeezing out. We're not concerned of squeezing it out over there because you're not going to get the juices out of a cloth. Ubekfifa mitzris, and you can also sift it or run it through a wicker basket. All these are allowed to be done on Shabbos because you're not actually separating good from bad, and so it's permissible. Similarly, another way where you're going to be separating and it's permissible. You could take an egg, and we saw this a couple of times already. You could take an egg and put it through a mustard sifter. There, essentially, what you want is there are a couple of parts of the mustard seed after it's been ground up. There's the husk of the seed, which they would use for food, and that was mixed with the egg white and would remain on the top of the sifter, and the egg yolk, which is a looser, more liquidy substance, would run through together with the ground up mustard seed and give the mustard seed color. But both of them were food, and both of them are edible. And so you're allowed to run it through because even though that you're separating one from the other, neither of them is good or bad because you actually want both, and both of them are edible. And therefore, you're allowed to do it. So separating the egg white from the egg yolk is not going to be prohibited on Shabbos, even though that you're separating, but the prohibition, as the halacha is selecting the good from the bad, and neither of these are good or bad. V'osin anumlin b'Shabbos, and Rashi says the old French word potion. So it's some sort of drink mix. So you can make that on Shabbos, and the Gemara is going to make that a distinction between this type, which is not specifically made for healing, versus other types of potions which are made for healing, and that we cannot make on Shabbos unless it's for somebody that is a chola that really needs it, on account of that you can't. The concern is you're going to grind up some of the ingredients of the medicinal potion, and that's prohibited on Shabbos. Now, Shabbos, because on Shabbos you can make it in a small amount, enough for 1 cup. B'yantiv belagin, and on Yantiv you can make it in a larger, like a jug. And on Chol HaMoed you can even make it large enough in a barrel. Rabbi Tzadok says, well, it depends how many people you have, and so it depends on your guests. You can make it as long as it's needed for Shabbos or Yantiv. The Iri says a person can put clear wine and water through a mishameres, through this sifting cloth on top of a barrel on Shabbos, and there's no concern to be of halachic concern. Look, but if it's cloudy water or cloudy wine, meaning that there's sediment in there, there's some sort of impurities that you want to remove that you're not allowed to do. Well, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said that you can actually mix your barrel of wine, which has sediment at the bottom and the clear wine at the top because it's been sitting for a while. You can mix it and then run it through. And then run it through the Mishamer. So you see, even if there are some impurities that you can run it through, even on Shabbos and it's no concern. So Zeiri explained, well, that's talking about in the press itself, in the wine pressing, the season at the press. And the reason is because there people drink the wine with the sediment. And this is a fascinating idea. When there are impurities, so take orange juice with pulp. So it's not an impurity. The juices are cloudy, if you would, right? It's got some other particles in there besides for the liquid, but that's the way people have it. You drink it that way. Separating that out is not selecting good from bad because it's essentially a part of the juice and you can drink it. And you can have it that way. That's what he says. However, if it's such impurities that you wouldn't drink the drink as is, only after you've separated it out, then you're not allowed to filter that on Shabbos. And this is relevant to us in regards to a water filter, right? The Brita water pitchers, you put the water in and it purifies it. So if we're talking about a place where you cannot or may not drink the water because of its impurities, so then you can't actually purify the water on Shabbos. But if it's drinkable without that, you just happen to like it better because you like the flavor after it's gone through the filter, so then you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. You're allowed to use cloth to filter out the wine. However, the way to do that is you have to put the cloth flat on top of the barrel, and you cannot make an indentation into it, and by lifting up the four corners and sort of making it like a receptacle. And with Kvifa, because that's more, Rashi says again, this is a concept we saw a few days ago. Uvdin nechol. It is looks too much like you're doing work in the vineyard. In the wine press. It looks like a weekday kind of thing. So if you do it differently in this manner that you just keep it flat, that's permissible. Then with Kvifa Mistris, you're allowed to use a basket, a wicker basket also for as a sieve. But the wicker basket is inside the barrel. It cannot be above the bottom of the barrel more than a tefach, because then you've made a tent at the bottom of the barrel. So it has to be that you keep it low within the barrel. If you put a cloth over the barrel as a sealant, as a cover, as long as it's only covering part, that's okay. Akula kuba asr. But if you put it on the top, you may not, because you're creating it's tent-like. You're creating a cover. Amar of Papa. Now Papa said, "Like nehadi kiddush tziniasa b'puma de kuza." A person the kuza de chavisa. A person should not put straw or twigs and affix it firmly at the opening of a jug, because that works as a filter. That works as a what's the word? As like a mesh. It creates sort of like a lattice mesh filter at the opening of the barrel. Sorry? Strainer, thank you. It works like a strainer. And that's prohibited on Shabbos, because you're going to be separating out the impurities. Because it's similar to mishameres, to this cloth that's going to be prohibited. The Vera Papi Shafi Shechar Mimana Lamana in the house of Rapapa, who was a brewmaster, who was a very well-known beer brewmaster, and they would pour from one barrel to another, or from one jug to another, and so they would pour gently, waiting. They wouldn't just pour it out; they would do it gently so that the sediment remains at the bottom, and only the clear liquid runs off at the top, and that's not considered selecting the good from the bad, because some of the good and bad mixture remains. And this is a concept that's important in understanding borer, that when the mixture is at the bottom and the liquid is separated already at the top, because the sediment and the juice at the bottom, you can pour off the top because it's already self-selected, right? It's already separated in the barrel, and you keep and you keep some of the mixture. And as long as you keep some of the mixture, so you haven't really created a total selection, a separation. And so the Gemara challenged, but once you get to the end, then you're really like pouring out a little liquid and then putting it upright so that the sediment falls again, and then a little more liquid. So what about at that point? What about at the drops? It says that they wouldn't do that because they had so much beer, they wouldn't sit there and pouring off just the last bits. People do that at home when they want to get their last bit of beer out of the sediment. But a brewmaster like that, they didn't care. Once they got towards the bottom of the barrel, it went away. And you put an egg through the mustard filter. So Taner Rabbi Yaakov Karcha, and now we're on 140a Kuf Mem and Aleph. Lefishein Eisen Eisa Ela Legavi, because this is only made as color, and really both parts are edible, as we saw earlier in the Masechta where the Gemara brought this, and Tues said that both the top and bottom are edible, and you're separating the egg white from the egg yolk, and both are edible. And as Rashi says here, you're not separating good from bad because both of them are edible and both of them are good. Itmar, and it said, Chardil Shalashim Erev Shabbos, you needed the mustard. So they would grind the mustard and mix it with a liquid. If you did so before Shabbos, Lamachar on Shabbos, Amarav and Machabekli, you can whisk it with a vessel, with a whisk, but you can't knead it, as it were, or mix it by hand, by mushing it with your hands. Amalei Shmuel biyad atukol yemim machale biyad. By hand, you can do it. What, every day? That's what he does. He mixes it by hand. It's true that mixing it by hand will do a better job of mixing and getting to all parts. But it's animal feed at this point, and he doesn't care if it's done perfectly, and so he wouldn't do it by hand. So therefore, Shabbos, where you need to do it differently, that's where you do it by hand. But you can't do it with a vessel to show that you're doing it differently than a weekday. Itmar Rabbi Eliezer Omer. It said that Rabbi Eliezer said that they're both prohibited, whether you do it with a vessel or by hand. However, Rabbi Yochanan Omar Rabbi Yochanan said both are permissible. Abaye and Rava both said, yeah, we don't follow that leniency of Rabbi Yochanan to say that they are both permissible. Come Rabbi Yochanan b'shittas Rabbi Eliezer. In the end, Rabbi Yochanan retracted and followed the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, said that they are both permissible and both prohibited. Come Rabbi Eliezer b'shittas Shmuel, and Rabbi Eliezer retracted and he said, you know what? We're going to follow the opinion of Shmuel, who says that you can use it, you can mix it by hand, but not with a vessel. And then Abaye and Rava both said the halach is like Rabbi Yochanan, that both are prohibited. You cannot mix this mustard and liquid by hand or with a whisk, by a fork, a vessel. The mother of Abaye we've seen before. He was raised by this woman who was a healer. His mother died in childbirth, and his father died before that. So his stepmother, his mother, who raised him, would make once made for him this mustard mix, but she made it on Shabbos, and he didn't eat it. The bitu de Zeiri, the wife of Zeiri, of the Leila Rabbi Barashi. Rabbi Barashi was her guest, and she made it for him. And he didn't eat. Amar Lei, so she said to him, very nice. You came to visit your teacher, your Rebbe. I made it for your teacher, your Rebbe, and he did eat it. And you won't eat it. Amar Rabbi Bar Shava have a keimna kamei the Ravina ubachshile be shufta de tuma v'achal. I was in front of Ravina, and it was mixed for him in the center of a garlic, and he ate it. I don't know if this is on account of that makes it different enough so it doesn't look like a weekday work because the mixture was not done in a bowl, in a plate, or rather in mustard, or it doesn't mix well there, and that's why it was permissible. I'm not sure. The halacha is not like any of these teachings. Rather, like this statement that was taught, mustard that was mixed before Shabbos with a liquid. So then on Shabbos you can whisk it and mix it by hand with a vessel, and you can put honey into it, nectar into it. You can make a greater mixture. But don't whisk it thoroughly, or rather just mix it in. There is a concept of lush. You can't mix a dry substance, such as flour, obviously, with water, with a liquid substance, because you're creating from a dry and a liquid into a dough. You're creating that mixture. So that's lush. That's kneading. But if it's already kneaded, in other words, you already have the dry substance and the liquid mixed beforehand, you're going to add some more in to change its consistency and make it and make it better. That's permissible because it's already been mixed. So that term of mixing the dry liquid, the dry substance with liquid is called gibul, and there's no prohibition of gibul acha gibul. So over here, you can add another substance like the honey because it's already had that mixture. However, you can't do a fine mixing of it because that is by making it too by mixing it so well, you may end up adding more flour or more dry substance. Shachalayim sheshocha kamer of Shabbos. Cress, I think it is, that was ground up before Shabbos and mixed with water. So so the next day, since it's already mixed the dry substance with water, you can add oil and vinegar and put in amita, which the Gemara later is going to tell us is mint. However, don't thoroughly mix it, whisk it entirely. But mix it in and make sure that it's all mixed in. Similarly, shum sharis kamer of Shabbos, garlic that was crushed before Shabbos. Nasatachapul ugrisin, so you can put in other substances. You can put in beans and or porridge, but don't grind it down thoroughly. Rather just mix it. And then you can put amita in, as we're going to see is mint. My amita ninya. What is amita? Ninya mint. From here we see that mint is good for shachalayim, which is cress, I think. So you can make this potion anumlin. You can make anumlin, but not aluntis. So what's the distinction between the two? Anumlin is a mix of wine, nectar, or honey, and peppercorns, I guess. Aluntis, yain shemen amayim tzlulin v'afarsima. It's old wine and water, that's purified water, clear water, and afarsimon. I'm not sure what afarsimon is. It's found at the Kinneret. We've seen it before, but I think it's balsam, but I'm not sure. And this was a potion done for after people would go into the bathhouses and they'd go into steam rooms and would sweat. So this was a drink afterwards to bring a person's temperature back down, and so it's sort of a healing kind of potion. I once followed Mar Ukva to a bathhouse. Kinafki, and when we came out, so they gave me of this wine, of this potion, of 1 cup. And I felt it from the tips of my hair on my head to the toe on my toenail, and that's how it had this cooling feeling throughout my body. And if it had given me a second cup of this, I would not have survived it. It would have taken some of my merit away from the world to come for surviving it. Well, Mar Ukva, the Shasikal said, but Mar Ukva actually drank one of this every day. Shana Mar Ukva, the Dashbe, of course, he drank it every day, so he was immune to it. He could handle it. For me, this was too much. Ein shorin es chiltis b'poshu. Chiltis is a very sharp vegetable or greens, and they would soak it in warm water, and then it gave off a medicinal. It had some medicinal features. So this cannot be soaked in the warm water on Shabbos. But you can put it into vinegar because that's not medicinal. That's as a dip, and that you can do. And you can't soak karshinin is again some sort of bean or berries, wheat berries or grain berries. And by soaking them, the impurities or the bad beans would flow to the top. You also can't rub them by hand to remove its impurities. But you could put it inside on a platter, which would be easy to separate them, or into a basket. Now, in but if there's straw in there, that you can't put on this platter in order to separate it, and this sifter. And don't put it on a high place in order for the straw and husks to fold out. But you can put it onto the sifter, and then from there into the trough for the animals. So essentially, in the mixture of separating grains and beans from their husks and from their stalks, so there's a lot of impurities. So when you sift, if you're going to do sifting with flour, that obviously is prohibited. So you're going to put it on the sifter here, and some is going to fall out, but it's going to allow it to be separated enough that you can then take what you need to eat. So that's permissible to be done, but you cannot shake it off in a way that all the hay and the straw and the parts that are impure, even though the animal's going to eat it, you cannot use this to separate it, and you can't put it on a way where it's going to slide off. You're putting it on an angle. Rather, you just put it there, and then you can select it because it'll bunch together. In Bailu Sharamai, it says you can't put this chiltis into warm water and soak it because which is used medicinally. You cannot soak it that way. If you did, is that a Torah prohibition? Tirgamar Rav Ada ben Narsha, Kamid Rav Yosef. Rav Ada said in front of Rav Yosef, that's a Torah prohibition, and if you did so on Shabbos inadvertently, you have to bring a sin offering. Abaye said, and would that also be apply to putting meat, raw meat in in water? That would also count as a Torah prohibition. So too over here, what's he doing? He didn't cook it. He didn't change it in that much that it would be prohibited. So rather, Abaye says this is a rabbinic prohibition. Don't do it in the same manner you do it in the weekday because, again, uvdin d'chol, this looks like you're creating potions. On Shabbos, it looks like you're doing a weekday work. So he said you can't put it into warm water. Can you put it into cold water and soak it that way? He said it's prohibited. But our Mishnah says you can't put it into warm water. It implies that I can put it into cold water. Well, you don't understand the Mishnah, and I don't either. You're asking me a question. You knew that Mishnah, and you asked the question anyhow because you knew that the Mishnah, even though it infers it may be cold, you can't. It may be cold, you can do, but you understood that, yourself that that may not be true because you're still soaking it, and that could still be the part of the process of creating this potion. So rather than Mishnah is a single opinion, and we could be following the majority. The Tani, like we learned, that the Tanakama says in the Brisa, don't say you cannot soak it in cold or warm water. Rabbi Yossi is the one that says you're allowed to put it into cold water, just not into warm water. And our Mishnah could be Rabbi Yossi, but you correctly understood that there could be another opinion, and there is, and we follow the other opinion. What is this potion made for? Somebody who has a heavy heart. He had this heavy heart. Also, he came before Maruk. Drink three measures of this potion over 3 days, so one each day. Well, it was Thursday. He drank one, and then the next day, so he drank it on the fifth day, on Thursday, on Friday, and on Shabbos, Shabbos morning, Ozal Shoel Beit Medrasha. He went and he came to the academy, into the base of Medrash, and he said, am I allowed to drink this on Shabbos? Am I drinking something medicinal that's prohibited? Because it wasn't an ailment, as we've seen, the halacha is that an ailment that is severe enough that it'll change the way you're going about your day. It's considered nafala mishkav. It makes you go to bed. So then you're allowed to take medicine for it. But if it's a mild ailment, it's a mild, really more like an annoyance. You feel it, but you can go about your day regularly. So then we don't take medicine on Shabbos on account of that that you may come to transgress Shabbos for the medicine. In those days, it would be grinding and making the potion. Today would be purchasing the potion and the medicine. But either way, there's a prohibition midrabanan not to do this. So he came and asked, am I allowed to do it? Amru le tanave ravada, amru tanave marba ravada. Shows adam kava kabayim ein choshish. You can drink one or two of these measures, and there's no concern. It's seemingly because that's a normal amount that people would drink even if they're not ill, and since that's since it's done also when you're not ill, so that's allowed to be done. Amalei lishras look at boili. To drink a bit, that's not my question. Am I allowed to make the potion on Shabbos? Can I soak the chiltis in order to make the potion? I had a similar story, and I went and asked Rabbi Barava, and he didn't know. Say, so what do we do? I say shiltel Rav Huna. We went and asked Rav Huna. Rav, see, Rav Huna quoted Rav. What you do is you put it into cold water, not in the hot water, warm water, which we said is prohibited. You put it into the cold water, and then put the cold water into the sun, direct sunlight, and let that warm it up, and that would be okay. So that would make the potion because it was in a warm water, and you weren't actually cooking it on Shabbos, but you put it into the sun, which we've seen earlier that direct sunlight cooking something is not a part of the cooking prohibition of Shabbos. Command shari, command shari, like the one that says it's permissible in cold water. So Gemara says, no, even according to the opinion that before said you're not allowed to do it, here it would be permissible. Why? Because he never had any drink. So don't start your potion on Shabbos. But over here, where you already started the potions, the remedy on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, if you don't continue with the series of medicine, it's going to be dangerous, meaning it's not going to have its effect that it needs to have. Therefore, he's allowed to have this. And this is relevant to somebody that even if they don't have an ailment that's serious, but nevertheless, if they're already in a series of taking medicine daily, or they're taking medicine that started its series before Shabbos, you can continue on Shabbos. That's what a lot of poskim say on account of this idea that once you start it, you can continue. Rav Yosef was elderly and leaning on his nephew, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. When we come near the house of Rav Safra, tell me and let me know, Eilina, I want to go in. Kimate, when they came there, they brought him up there. They asked him, can you really rub a garment against itself, a linen garment against itself on Shabbos? What's the reason that you would do this? L'rakuchi, after it's been washed, the linen became very stiff, and you wanted to soften it on Shabbos. And so l'rakuchi kitna kamechabit, he's trying to soften it, and therefore v'shaper dami, and therefore it's permissible. Odilmo, perhaps le'aludi chivra kamechabit, even though that he may also intend to soften it, but he also wants to make it whiter by getting some of the impurities off. And that's going to be prohibited because you're whitening the garment, that's cleaning it. No, generally the main purpose that people do this rubbing of the garment after it was washed is not to get the impurities off. That's done during the washing. True, some more may come off, but right now what you're trying to do is to soften the garment so that it's wearable, and that's permissible. Kinafik, when it came out, so his nephew asked him, what uncle, and what did you ask him of him? I asked him, can you rub the linen on Shabbos after it was washed? And he said, you may. So he said, why don't you ask him about a head kerchief? That I didn't have a question about. The bayamin miravuna upashitli, because I asked Rav Huna already, and he answered me. when I asked Rav Huna, and that he answered me. Some texts over here on the side say, and he answered me that it's prohibited. Well, so then why don't you compare it to your head kerchief, and say, just like you can't rub the head kerchief, so too you can't rub the linens. I'm like, no, on the head kerchief, you really want it to be clean and white, and therefore it looks like, even if it's not, you're not intending for the cleaning it, but it looks like that's what you're doing. But in a garment, it doesn't look that way. This linen garment. When they would hang it in the cleaning process, in the drying process, they would hang it on a rod that would go through the sleeves, from one sleeve to the other. So you can't move the rod on Shabbos. It would be muksa if it didn't have any other use other than either cleaning or kindling. So then it would be muksa. So you would have to slide the garment off the rod. That you're allowed to do. You can slide the garment off on Shabbos. Kanya mimena also, but to take the rod out from the garment, that would be prohibited because it's muksa. Amarava ve'im klikiyuahu muter. But if it has a purposeful use other than for cleaning a garment in the cleaning process, which is prohibited on Shabbos, or it has another use other than kindling. So what would be that use? We saw this earlier, that they would put a reed, a long stick, inside barrels that either the grapes or the olives were sitting in, to see whether the juices at the bottom are coming out and what they're like. And so if you use it for such a kind of vessel, or really any purpose that you have this rod other than that, other than a prohibited use, so then you're allowed to move the rod out as well. If you have a bundle of vegetables, if it's animal feed, so you're allowed to move it on Shabbos. And if not, a bundle, it looks like you're taking it to the marketplace, so it's produce for merchandise, and it's prohibited. If you have meat hanging and drying, that you're allowed to move on Shabbos. The chivra, but fish hanging, a hook of fish, aser, that's going to be prohibited because that's not edible. Somebody who stands in the middle of a bed, like is standing in the middle of a woman. In other words, if you're standing on a woman's bed or a couple's bed, you are invading their space, at least mentally. V'lav milsi, Gemara says, and it's not a matter. Some take the text out over here, because usually when the Gemara says this, such a text, v'lav milsi, it says why not? It's not a concern because something, and the Gemara doesn't conclude that. So some say this is a mistaken text. Either way, the text we have says v'lav milsi, it's not a concern. The zavani yarka lisbon aricha kisha kikisha. Somebody who buys vegetables should buy the longer vegetables, the length of the tie. This way, the length will be equal, so you know how much you're getting. The zavin kanya lisbon aricha. With somebody who's buying reeds, bundles of reeds, tuna kituna, v'orcha memela. Also, these are marketplace advice. Barbe Rav, a student in the academy, who doesn't have enough bread, so he shouldn't eat vegetables. Because it makes you more hungry, you're going to want to eat more bread. So if you don't have a lot of bread, so then don't eat vegetables, which will make you want to eat more. When I was poor, I wouldn't eat vegetables on account of that it would make me eat more, and I couldn't afford it. And when I was wealthy, I wouldn't eat vegetables either. Because it would make me eat more and I couldn't afford it. But when I was wealthy, the amina, because I'd say the ayel yarka, if I have room for some vegetables, liayel bisra, so let some meat go in there. I'm not going to waste my appetite on some greens. A student that doesn't have enough, can't afford bread, it shouldn't cut slices. Again, it seems that he'll eat some now, and he'll eat some later. Rather, he should eat whatever he needs right now. He shouldn't actually cut pieces at all. Because if he's cutting, it won't, and for someone else, it's going to look like he's being stingy because he doesn't have enough, so he's cutting small slices. All right, we're going to leave these advice at this point, and we'll see more Matzah Shabbos. Wishing you all a great Shabbos.